Welcome. Today we'll be talking about calculation in chess and the reasons why being good at calculation implies a huge development in cognitive skills and abilities. Calculation is one of those words that's very commonly used in chess, but not many people have probably delved deep into it to obtain a clarity in terms of what really calculation does mean in chess. Okay, let's get started. So this is a very famous game between Karpov and Timin. I'm indicating this for you to understand how moves and plies are calculated in chess. So, for example, the number written here, 1, 2, 3, 4, is the move. So, the first move for white was e4, for black was d6. The second move for white was d4, black was nf6. The third move was nc3 and g6 for black. And the fourth move was just g3 because it's white's turn to have just played and it's black's turn to play next. And it hasn't yet played. So you would call this 4 moves into the game. But each move, if you observe carefully, has a move for white and a move for black. And this is what we call as ply. So a ply is kind of like half a move. So e4 alone is 1 ply. e4 and d6 is 2 ply. So in this game, even though it's 4 moves, it's actually 7 plies. I hope you've understood what moves and plies are, because this is very essential for us to understand what calculation is. So this is a puzzle which basically says it's checkmate in 2. Right? And I've put the answer as well. It's rook f1, one of the answers. Rook f1, king moves to h8, rook f8, check. How many plies? And the answer is very simple because all you have to think about is, okay, I see 2 moves for white, 1 move for black, so therefore it's 3 plies. It's very true, it's 3 plies in terms of the answer, but in terms of the calculation, it's actually a 4 ply calculation. That'll sound confusing? Don't worry, we'll clarify that. So what is calculation? What is this magical word? Where does it come? We've heard of calculation a lot in math, not so much in chess, and it's hard to think of. We probably have an intuitive understanding of what calculation is in math, but not so much in chess. So let's try and understand it at a deeper level. So calculation is a process of determining a result by performing some form of mathematical operation or logical procedure. Chess probably falls under the logical procedure. So in other words, you can imagine calculation as this big black box with a lot of inputs. Maybe one, maybe many, but they're inputs. And there are these process rules and algorithms and principles that this black box follows to manipulate these inputs, to modify and manipulate these inputs in order to get the output. So calculation is a rigorous application of rules and algorithms to achieve the correct output for a given input within a context. So let's take an example of simple addition. So you have 2 inputs, 10 and 20. The algorithm for addition says you can combine that out. It's literally like counting them out. And you would say that the answer is 30. The rules of addition combines input values to obtain the output. This is an example of a mathematical calculation. If somebody were to say 10 plus 20 is actually 40, then they have miscalculated or got the answer wrong. They have not applied the rules of calculation very, very diligently, very, very rigorously into this algorithm. Sometimes you could have a multi-phase or multi-level one. So this is a wonderful puzzle that's there in a website called Brain Bashers, called the 30-second puzzle. So you have the input from each box flowing into the output of the next one. So in this case, for example, 10 minus 2 is 8, half of 8 is 4, 4 plus 13 is 17, 17 times 5 is 85, minus 10 is 75, divided by 5 is 15, minus 8 is 7, 7 squared is 49, 49 plus 14 is 63. So as you can see, what I did was mental calculation. I applied the rules of subtracting, of squaring, of adding, of multiplying, of dividing in the sequence as given in the puzzle to be able to get the answer. This is what calculation is, and to be able to do it mentally is mental math or mental calculations. And that's what develops the cognitive abilities, because you got to do the constant you need to be applying this calculation step by step, storing it in your brain and then retrieving it again and then doing it to the next one, and ensure that you proceed following the rule at every single step to get the right answer. Okay, now That's all clear, but how does it apply to chess? So in chess, you can think of the black box in the following way. There are principles of chess that guides you in terms of, what is the correct way to think about the best move. The input is always the position. You look at a particular position, you apply the principles of chess, and you obtain the best move possible. So not only the rules of chess, but also the principles of chess determines the best move. And a lot of your preparation and study in chess is to learn these principles, to understand these rules. The rules are easy. Most beginners and novices understand the rules. The principles and the intuition behind chess is what takes a lifetime. Now, while it looks like a single line of calculation, you can actually think of it as two levels of calculation. This is one of the reasons for why chess develops cognitive skills. So the first step is that you take a position, you apply the principles of chess, but you don't get the best move right away. You get the candidate move. And then you think about the candidate move as being the best move in a given context. For example, if it were to be a checkmate puzzle, then the context is checkmate. Does it solve your solution? The problem. Does it solve your problem of getting a checkmate in two moves? If not, then you reiterate. You go back to the position and you come up with a different candidate move. So how chess differs when it comes to math is because you probably need to be doing a multi-pronged calculation at each step, which is why it becomes so much harder. It's in terms of complexity, a basic chess calculation would be equivalent to doing, like, say, triple digit multiplication and doing it every day and doing it in every game. And that's one of the reasons why chess makes everybody intelligent. Now let's take an example here. One ply calculation. Imagine you're just doing one ply calculation. This is basically saying what's the legal move in chess. One ply calculation is nothing but application of rules. If you were to come to a conclusion saying that the king can move to 5 different squares, the rook can move to 14 different squares, in total I have 19 possibilities, then you're doing a one ply calculation. But it doesn't ensure that rook f1 would be the first move that you think about. It could very well be, king h6, because it's a one ply calculation. And most beginners and novices are here. They just make the first move without thinking the possible response, which means they're all one ply calculators. When you do a two ply calculation, you think about what happens in this context. So now let's say I move king h6. Then I need to think of what black is going to do. I don't have to wait for him to do it. I need to think about it. And it's very logical that the king would just go and capture the rook in that case. So the two ply calculation denies king h6 as a possible best move. Therefore, I reiterate it back and I come back and I think of all the possible moves. So out of the 19 calculations, if I were to basically think about all the possibilities which gives me decent moves, there might be maybe about 10 different things here because it's a two ply calculation. So for example, rook d7 is totally decent because then king moves to f8 and the game continues. You've not lost the game. But king goes to h8, then you have a checkmate. So like a 50% chance, right? But most likely it won't happen that king moves to h8 and you'll have a checkmate. So two ply calculation still doesn't get you the answer. It just allows you to extend the game a little bit without making a blunder. When you think about the three ply calculation, now let's say you move rook f1, king goes to h8, and you think about what's the next move. I need to give a check. And again, if it was just three ply, then rook f8 is one possibility. There's an equal possibility that you move rook to h1 and give a check and not do a checkmate. Again, the game continues, but it's just not a checkmate in two moves. You might just take another two moves to checkmate him. And this is the reason just doing three ply calculation is not going to give you the answer. You would still run into the potential of getting an error. And that's why you need to be thinking of the four ply calculation to say that if I do rook h1, king gets out. He goes to g8 again. And that's the reason rook f8 is the only correct answer, which ensures it's a back rank mate. So that's why every checkmate in 1 is a 2-ply calculation. Every checkmate in 2 is probably a 4-ply calculation. In addition to the very nature of chess being that it's very iterative and you have to go through the process of elimination before you arrive at selection. So given all of these factors is what makes chess calculation tough, and those who make this tough calculation smart. Alright, next steps, how to improve calculation. Always think about the opponent's response. Become a 2-ply calculator at the minimum. Don't be a 1-ply calculator. If you are playing chess, in fact, most beginners and novice players are one-ply calculator. They just know the rules, they just know how to apply it, but not beyond that. So at least if you become good at two-ply calculation, you would just start with that question of what is he going to do next? If I do that, what's he going to do next? And that's the basic, the harbinger of calculation that's going to develop in your brain. The next is you need to be intelligent and you need to be aware in chess calculations. So intelligence will help you come up with the candidate moves. You can select the candidate moves. But the awareness is always going to keep questioning, saying, okay, I know that this is the possible answer, but is this the best answer? Is it getting me a checkmate? Right? That awareness is something that develops very specifically to chess, not so much for math. Because in math, when you do a calculation, the answer does not make you aware of whether you're right or wrong. You need to do the due diligence to get there. But here, it's much easier to get to that awareness. And finally, always seek principles. These are cognitive shortcuts, cognitive diamonds, cognitive gems that will reduce the complexity of your calculation. So for example, in the previous problem, you would realize that moving the king is futile, doesn't help you. You can club the rook moves into horizontal, vertical, and you'd realize that the horizontal doesn't give you the answer. So you club all vertical together, realize that rook f8 is a bad idea, and therefore f1 to f6, any of those is going to be the answer. And that's the way you kind of solve it. And if you apply the principle of Zugzwang, which is you're forcing your opponent to move to one and only one square, then that gives you a chance to reduce the complexity of the calculation and becomes much easier, and you would be able to get to the solution faster. I hope you found this video useful and you'd be able to apply these simple ideas in your chess calculation as you go along. If so, please share your comments and experiences with us, and that would be wonderful. Click on the subscribe button if you haven't. Click on the bell icon so that I can see you in the next video. Thank you so much.